You're listening to RevOps Champions, a podcast created for B2B leaders to help you align your people, streamline your processes, trust your data, and leverage technology in order to grow your business. We're your hosts, Brendan Denawell
and Amy Weaver.
My name's Aaron Rickard. I am the head of operations here at Denamico. We're a HubSpot implementation partner. And so I've worked with the delivery team for the last 2 years since I've been here, really growing how we stand out in the marketplace and the ecosystem with the HubSpot partners. So one thing that we've done over the last 2 years that's been very interesting is we've become an accredited partner in the HubSpot ecosystem. So when we started here at Denamico, there were no accreditations or no rankings, and we were doing a lot of great work, but we're never measured on it. As of today, we hold 5 out of 6 in the ecosystem. We've become one of the top rated partners, and it's a testament to the great talent on this team. But I work with a lot of our clients. I hear about what they're going through, work with our consultants to make sure that we have the right skill sets and capabilities to meet the demand and do things well. And so I've been around HubSpot for probably 8 years now, 6 to 8 years, right when Sales Hub first came out, and seen every evolution since then. Love the tool. I think it's one of the most fun and engaging tools that you can use in the marketplace. There's a lot more tools that you'll use in your day-to-day, but we as a HubSpot partner get to work the most in HubSpot. And so we do really like the tool. And we think people that use it get a lot of great results out of it. So,
hopefully.
And today, I think, so to your point, the second part, what do you want to talk about today? So I think the biggest thing is, in the RevOps ecosystem that we talk about, there is like the sales team and the marketing team and the service team that gets a lot of call outs. One spot that, we've been talked to a lot as a partner is we've kind of found a specialty in working in Ops Hub a lot. Operations Hub is a set of tools that's primarily more designed for keeping your business organized, and especially what you would see this sort of analyst or internal tech wizard type role take on. And it's just really keeping the big business organized, keeping everyone on the same page, and having some truth and consistency in how everything functions. So Ops Hub really is a specialized set of tools for that reason. And so I think we could talk a lot about that today and kind of what that user can do in HubSpot, why it benefits them, what we're seeing people in the market do.
And what you've seen primarily is a technologist type role that would be the one using it.
Yeah, definitely. So it's interesting because it is HubSpot as a tool. You try to make it less IT dependent. So IT sort of sets it up. You get your connection set up, security settings, and so forth across company permissions. However, there's sort of like it needs to be admin by product marketing or sales. However, there is sort of like this middle layer of you might have security and account ownership by IT. You might have marketing and sales running their departments, but then you sort of have this middle admin level who's in charge of reporting and integrations and
operations,
data consistency, operations, data hygiene, reports look right. How do I validate things are working? Do managers, are they seeing the right information? Are we able to add new functionality when we launch a new line? There's this middle sort of technologist role, and you're seeing it sort of come into the marketplace as a specialized sort of skill set. That's it is a non-degree skill set, I would say. Like someone's going to have a degree in something else, but it's sort of learned on the job, because a lot of these tools, especially cloud systems and this integration atmosphere, the ecosystem has just changed a lot over the last 10 years. I mean, 10 years ago, you were seeing the first cloud softwares come to market. And so the most experience anyone can have in these cloud systems and these low code integrations and data hygiene type tools that aren't IT managed, the most experience they can have is 10 years in it. And so you're really looking at who has spent the last 10 years learning these tools and just has learned through doing. And so it's this sort of interesting role that this tool set is really built to keep supporting. So
that's some really good context.
Yeah.
And in fact, on a recent episode, Aaron, and we've had a few variations of the same thing, but there was my favorite one so far was this person that you're describing. Our guest described as the RevOps superheroes, because you alluded to the fact that you have your marketing team, your sales team, your service team, and they're all working in what they're good at and what they're specialized in, but they're all being enabled ideally today cross-functionally by these superheroes who are the ones that are tracking the data and reporting, who are making sure the technology that they're using is continuously optimized. And so you were essentially saying the same thing.
But
so
you
I
just
really,
had a cute way to call them tech wizards and witches.
Yeah. I saw that in the internet a couple weeks ago that someone was calling it like a tech witch or a tech wizard. And I was like, that's probably good. There is no certification in it or degree in it. It's sort of just something you
Yes.
learn and is
Yes, absolutely.
inherently just a talent you gain.
yeah, not
So,
yet anyhow, right?
correct. Yeah.
So from your time here at Denamico, working with clients, so seeing what the inner workings of their businesses are like, but also from your previous career experience, what are some qualities that you've noticed with teams, businesses that are able to scale at a much more efficient and effective pace than maybe a company that is struggling?
Yeah. I'm going to probably answer this question in a way that definitely relates to healthy
Okay.
scaling. I think there are a lot of companies that can grow that you see success stories on where they grow, 10x in a couple of years or 5x in a couple of years, or it's compounding mega growth. But internally, it's a disaster and everyone's stressed out. And that growth primarily comes from high margins and a great market fit. I think we as experts get talked to more about how do we do this more a scalable way that people don't feel stressed out all the time. And so that sort of growth, I think there's a few things that they have in common tactically. I think there's a lot of philosophical things that the companies do right as well, but like tactically, what does that look like today? One of those things is I do believe they have usually an analyst or this tech wizard seat.
A dedicated person.
Yeah. And the reason being that that's important is because if you don't have that person, you're going to get a lot of internal time reconciling or fixing data. So accounting is going to be saying one thing, sales be saying another thing. They might both be wrong. They might both be right, but you won't know until you go through the reconciliation process. And so you're just starting to lose track of like what direction is up, what's going on. You're going to have a zillion internal emails going on. Like it just gets to be insane. And so sort of having this person in that middle seat and owning, like, if I look at them and what they're accountable for, they're basically accountable probably to the president or the person running the company to just basically like when something seems off to go investigate it and just understand what is it systems, is it people, is it what's going on that's leaving things off, is it to tech or something, and just always bringing recommendations of like how to solve this and then being able to implement those like fairly quickly and readily.
So there's a troubleshooting aspect, and then there's this continual optimization that's happening.
Essentially, yeah. They might have a standard set of tasks that they do every day, week, month. Like they're probably somewhat involved with month end on a financial basis. And so they're probably some sort of involved with like reconciliations and understanding where things get off. But there is a component of like, they're just continuously evolving and working through things, identifying what gets off and like having an kind of a pulse on what's happening in the organization too. And just sort of like keeping watch of like, okay, did things get off when there's an urgent rush and people like cut corners on things? Or is it, wow, it's off because we're actually getting customer service inquiries through text message and then people are forwarding text to each other in the company.
So being able to zoom out and kind of spot some trends as well.
Yeah, I'd say that's one big component of it that really helps the scalability part, because that person is going to sort of lead the systems and the tech. It's tricky because sometimes if you can go to partners on it, but you got to choose the right partner as well, or what component you want that partner to be available for, right? So like it gets harder to go outside when you get to more channels. So like if you're doing e-commerce, distributors, you're going 100 locations, it gets a little bit harder to go to a partner to say, hey, do everything for me. But you can go to a partner to really say like, you can find really great partners that specialize in certain areas. Like we really want one partner that works like primarily with sales and customer service and keeping things together. Or we want a partner that really ties like marketing and sales aspects together and helps us get everyone on the same page in that area. And then we have an internal team take care of accounting and sales or something like that. Right? You can kind of, depending on your expertise and skill level, you can use partners to varying degrees to like really, I think, you can actually get better output from partners in specialty areas. Like there are definitely times your internal team will not be able to do stuff and fix stuff themselves. And so part of being that internal expert is also finding the right partners for the niche areas you need. Like you're probably going to have an outsourced IT organization that handles all your computer deployment and setup and hardware and stuff. You might have another partner that handles all of your tax and compliance and sales tax items, right? Like, so finding the right partner for the right niche areas is also a part of it in just running that healthy organization.
Well, and to your point of if you had this role, this analyst, this tech wizard type person internally, they would be the most equipped to identify what that niche area is where you're lacking.
Definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And that tech wizard is a good person to, find the options, find the right person, find the right culture fit for your org. I think getting to know your partners is super important, in understanding like how they work together. Working styles is definitely important. A lot of companies that are scaling fast are trying to move at a certain quick
you can say
pace,
a breakneck pace.
Yeah, I don't know if it's breakneck, but it is like a certain, like you probably internally are making decisions and saying we want to improve this next week or every 2 weeks or 1 month from now, and you're kind of thinking internally like, hey, we want to just take a step in the next 2 weeks, take a step in the next 2 weeks, or take a step in a week, and finding the right partner that can kind of go at that same pace as you want to go is pretty important. Because I'd say you see it more in the ERP space. People will be like, yeah, this is going to take 16 to 18 weeks. And if you want a small tweak, it's going to take us 4 weeks. Sometimes that doesn't work. And so it's finding the right partner that just matches your working style. Some of those partners are very good for larger orgs that have like very structured, systematic methods. You see it in you would see that more in a large scale distributor business that maybe has like 50 locations and shipments go out every day at 5:00 and so forth. They might plan stuff out 4 or 5 months in a row ahead of time, because if something gets off, they have 100 people standing around and things are going the wrong directions. So they might really do that differently. But I'd say generally what we're seeing in the marketplace is a lot of people really want to move at a decent clip. They work on a quarterly basis for large objectives, and they work on, a monthly or biweekly basis for like incremental progress. And so finding the right partner that can meet you on that incremental process is super helpful.
Let's circle back a little bit to OpsHub specifically, because you mentioned some use cases for OpsHub that I think would be really beneficial for someone in this role or someone looking to improve upon what they're doing today. So what are some examples for that?
Definitely. So if you're on HubSpot currently or looking at HubSpot and you're kind of sitting in this tech wizard role or are helping, maybe you want to become a tech wizard of your company, you're just in a different seat. There's a couple of fun things that OpsHub does really well that have been a great add-on to the system. So there's a couple that stand out to me that we see the most people using. One is you can run JavaScript and Python in workflows in HubSpot now. So we're seeing use cases for this where, just like any other HubSpot workflow, when a trigger criteria gets set or at a timed interval, you can run workflows on records. Now you can have better connections with other tools, or you can enrich data or run any sort of little more nuanced process that was very difficult with the low code or no code tools. So the no code tools were like drag and drop. It sometimes gets very hard to get a consistent output because you have so many branches and errors handling going on. The coded workflows, in 30 minutes, you can start to say, okay, we want to search for this, or update a thing in a software, or validate something through a DUNS number. Or we want to say, hey, we see it with people at schools a lot, right? Like we work with a lot of clients who have large schools in school districts in their databases. When someone comes in, maybe we want to run some code to check a specific API that tells us, okay, this school ID means this name, this address, this location. And so they're getting clean data in from this. And so that's one use case. Another use case we see a lot is like cleaning up names is super helpful. When someone has like a surname ahead of their names, we see this in nonprofits a lot when gifting. It's like Mr. or Miss, the second or third. And so keeping name formatting clean, we see a lot of that during the code. We see a lot of deduplication checks as well. So is there a duplicate company with the same ID code? Is there a duplicate record with this? How are we using any sort of incremental numbering? So you see a lot of this like coded workflows being super helpful. It's also helpful when you're running integrations to softwares and maybe you need to get a little bit extra data out of another system at certain times. You can go and pull that out. And so it's just really helpful to do those edge cases that you run into, especially as you're growing. The small issues compound up. And so like the fact that you can spin up a workflow in 1 hour and it takes away that one, even if you take one problem off the pile, over a year that piles up, right? And so it's like basically anytime you can save yourself, when you're sitting in these seats, you're going to get a lot of questions in the company. Why does this happen? Oh, can you check what is? Can you confirm this? And so you're basically just handling all these questions throughout the business for probably a third to a half the day. It's just like, why is this? Can you confirm this? And so giving these admins and administrators a tool set where in 30 minutes to an hour, you can take one consistent question off the table through a fix that adds up across the year. And so that tool set of like, yes, I can consistently and reliably remove this problem from the business, even if it's a 5-minute thing. If it comes up twice a week for a whole year, that's helpful for everyone. So it's a really good tool set for just those incremental fixes. So we see that with coded workflows. Another great tool is actually data formatting rules. So in workflows, you can actually run basically Excel formulas on your data now. So it's like concat, absolute, min, max, all these formulas that you can run and basically say like, as things are going through a workflow, maybe we want to update numerical values, update text values. You know, if you're familiar with Excel world, you can have function like if you're an analyst, you commonly do things like standardizing name formats or referencing names between two systems or cleaning up mistypes and typos or extra spaces. And so these tools help you like trim white space off names, can validate addresses, update amounts, keep them in the right decimal places, format numbers of addresses the right way. It's just so much that it can just like really clean up your reporting. Like give you a great example. If you're an analyst and you want to do a report on sales by state or zip code, you're going to export a file and you're going to have self-typed zip codes in there. And some are going to be 5 digits, some are going to be 9 digits, some are going to have a space on the end, a space on the front, some are going to have a random period that they accidentally typed if it's just a standard form. And so you could basically use OpsHub to always keep yourself, a clean list of zip codes on everything, right? Or states, you might have one form that on your website that's getting leads and they type in what state or region they're in and they're typing it instead of the 2-digit abbreviation, they're typing the full name, or some are doing the abbreviation. And so now whenever you want to pull this report by sales by state, again, here we are changing state names for everything before we can get this report out.
Every possible combination of what somebody could have entered.
Yes. Yeah. And so again, it's like these things, someone wants a report by state and here you are, it takes an extra 10 minutes to format locations correctly. OpsHub, you can spin up a workflow, runs all the time, keeps everything fresh so that when you need to do that report, it saves you the 5 to 15 minutes on just that section. And so that's where you see it being used a lot. Like it helps that administer, tech witch, tech wizard, admin, analyst, whatever that role title is, it helps that person quite a bit.
And actually what it makes me realize as you think about it, first of all, Aaron, the tech wizard witch superhero, I'm actually thinking that they're not just a tech wizard or superhero, they're actually a tech and data or tech and data and reporting wizard, right? Because they're, as our guest said last week, they're in this enablement role. In other words, they're there to make marketing, sales, and service as productive and efficient as possible, while maintaining like the highest level of customer experience and customer satisfaction. So they're playing this superhero role of doing things that are both proactive. In other words, all the examples you just gave now are examples of how can the marketing, sales, and service teams be proactive on a daily, hourly basis, because it's cleaning up all these things that otherwise would be entered in and would slow things down or create friction as we talk about. But the other part of being a superhero is the reactive part, right? So if something does go wrong with a system or a report or something, if you didn't have this role supporting, whether it's marketing, sales, and service, or all three, you don't necessarily have the right person to go in and then find where the issue might be reactively. Once they dig down and find it, then they turn it into a proactive solution going forward. So I love the way you've sort of set that up. That they're, first of all, they they seem to be more than a tech wizard, because it ultimately comes down, because the tech obviously enables the data flow. The data flow is what really comes out from the reporting, whether the reporting is being used by, it doesn't matter where in the business, the reporting needs to be accurate. These, again, it just highlights how important these folks are. And of course, I love the examples you gave of what they can do in UpsHub to just take it to the next level.
Yeah, definitely. It's a these people are generally very good at, they take a scientific approach to problems generally, or if you're good at it, you're going to take a scientific approach, right? Like, which is where good tech comes into hand, because, if you have a good audit log and good systems that record things correctly, you can trace an issue or things fairly consistently. But there's a scientific approach of like, what's my hypothesis? Okay, I think this is going wrong. Let me go inspect if that is part of what's going on. And then you test like, okay, if I fix this, does this solve the problem? But only 80% of the time. Okay, well, what's the other 20%? Why is that happening? And you kind of just keep going. And it is a very scientific process they go down. So it is, to your point, part reactive, part proactive on these things. So another good feature that you're seeing with this OpsHub too, that I think these roles really like, is it gives you an extended functionality of connections. So the HubSpot has all these free integrations in the marketplace, which is part of like their key software offering, is you can integrate with NetSuite and QuickBooks and PandaDoc and all these great tools, hundreds of other tools for free, right? It's just in the marketplace. In those integrations, the limitation of them is that they are like, you kind of get what you get. Like you can map these fields to these fields, and that's all you can do. Once you go to OpsHub, I think on the pro level is where it unlocks majority of like, now you can do custom fields back and forth. So it's not just the standard fields in both systems. It'll also look for custom fields in both systems. And now you can map custom fields back and forth between the systems. So that's helpful just from the aspect of, it saves you having to get a separate integration tool to run some of these. Like you basically you can, if you need to add a field here in both systems, you can just continue to sync more data back and forth without having to rebuild an integration every time you add a custom field.
So in that scenario, you would take the out of the box, free integration, and you would modify it to do some of the more complex.
That's right. Yep. You're just basically adding steps or functionality to the out of the box integration that is available with OpsHub. So that's another good feature where it's like, you're going to run into a scenario in this role where you're adding some other data that you need to store or value. A great example would be, when I think of like growing organizations, you generally grow through more sales channels, more employees, more product offerings,
hopefully more automation,
larger teams, more automation, more teams. All these things add complexity to like what you're doing in your business. And so if you're adding now an attribute of what channel is this through, or was this part of a new offering that we launched, or there's just all these attributes that you might want to check and measure across the business. Like, what are our sales with new offerings? Did our channel grow as fast as we thought it would? Well, all this comes from like tagging and labeling the correct way in the system. And so if you need those labels or tags to sync either direction as you're adding more things, you're going to have to add some sort of sync functionality for these tags and labels and properties as you go. And instead of having to rebuild the entire integration, you can just add one bit on. So makes it easier to just be agile and grow without pushing back. Like no one likes it when IT pushes back on things. Like it doesn't make anyone's day easier. So just being able to say, yes, it will take a couple days, it is better than, yes, it will take 3 months, right? Like if it can take 1 to 2 days, that's great. They'll probably can squeeze in time to make that update, and it'll be this week, not this year. So,
and like we talked about earlier, if you're trying to scale at this rapid pace, then you want to be able to move quickly with these types of things as well.
Yeah, basically you have to. Otherwise, you're going to be importing spreadsheets to make up for it. And I don't think anyone wants to do that in their free time. So like having the right tool set is super valuable for these people. So,
well, not to necessarily switch gears, because we can keep talking about data and technology really. But a common theme when we talk to our other guests is some of the companies where they've worked, the data was a true asset. Like they could make quick, very informed decisions using the data because it was clean, because it was real time. But we've also talked to people who have been in roles where they didn't know how to make heads or tails of their data. They didn't know what was accurate. Their reporting showed something totally different from the finance department. And so I guess we would like to get your take on how to stay more toward the asset side of your data and technology, as opposed to it becoming or remaining a liability if you're starting out from that.
Yeah, great question. Great question. So it's interesting because there's a couple things in your question that are intriguing. So I think one thing that you mentioned is people are trying to get things from their data or understand where to go. That's sort of, it's a common pattern to go into, but it's sort of unscientific in a certain approach. Like the way I would look at this, and I think in business, is you got to come up with your own hypothesis. And so saying like, in my head, I would say, I think it's a scientific question that you need to go validate. And so what I think about is develop a hypothesis, then go look it up in the system and see if the data matches what your hypothesis is saying. Instead of saying, look at the data and then develop a hypothesis of like, I think we should do this. It's like, develop the hypothesis first, then go check your data. It will keep you from going down 500 rabbit holes that maybe don't take you anywhere. That's probably the first step. And, just think about like scientifically as a business, it's like, I'm in touch with my customers. I talk with them. I bet that most of my customers or our buying teams or purchasers have this job title or are this profession or are in this industry, and then trying to go back to your data and say, can we actually prove that or not? Is the data complete? Can we see that? So I think that's just one thing, is like trying not to perfect, because it can be really easy to say like we need to perfect all of our data to see anything important from it, when that maybe isn't the case, right? Like you might just need to be able to find the data that tells you if you're thinking properly or
maybe
not.
just start,
right?
don't start so broadly.
Yeah, don't start so broadly. Like take a more specific approach. And the true scientific approach is if you're just trying to figure out, is my assumption correct or not? And if so, if it's you might say, okay, I thought majority of our customers were in this industry or in this job suite. You might go look and that's not true, but that's okay. That just tells you, yes, okay, this wasn't the right spot to be looking, or this isn't the interesting component. And then if you don't have the data, then it's something, okay, maybe we should go find how to get this information, or how could we source this information, right? And so it's less of I'm focused on getting perfect data, but I'm getting data to answer my question. And so if you can take it that way, it becomes a lot more digestible. And it also makes the data cleanup can go till end of time. And what's crazy is it might not lead you to any outcomes. It could just totally be a hunch that gets you to the next business breakthrough, right? But this is I think this, I'm going to my own point here, is that sometimes a hunch is what you need to make the next step. And so it's, do I have a hunch or a hypothesis? Let's go see if the data makes sense. And then should we put more time and resources into going down that road or that avenue? Now, as far as the assets and liabilities part, this is, I think, to your point, assets produce you, like I think of assets and liabilities in like financial sense of assets produce income or future cash flows. Liabilities cost me money over and over and over again. And even though it might give me something in return, it is still taking effort and money to sustain. When I look at data and technology in general, I think there's just generally spots where I like my head goes to immediately, like this is where I would go first, and this is what I'd probably stay away from. So just broadly, I would probably stay away from any system that is like costing me time and money every day to keep from breaking. Like that is just, you don't want things that are just breaking consistently and you're just spending your time making it not break. Like that's just like, you don't want to, like, I think there are softwares like that people are still on from like the 2000s, where it's just like they're spending their day-to-day, this thing does this thing because of this way, and that makes so-and-so have to do this, and then the next person has to do this, and then, if anyone updates anything, we have to go through the 4 steps again to make sure the thing works. Like that's liability, right? Like you don't want that, because you're spending payroll money every day fixing things that
should just
need
work.
to be fixed. Like that's a yeah, it should just work. That's how I would think of as like a liability. On the other side of assets, it's interesting because it's less, I feel like, the data and more so the systems. And so good data creates productivity in your organization, but also like the layout and usability of that also creates really good. I'll give you an example. The less clicks someone has to do to write an order. I think you see it in like the $10 to $20 million range. A lot of companies, you'll start looking at like, what is our cost to write an order? Or what is our cost to do a transaction? And you'll start looking at, okay, it touches this person for 15 minutes and this person for 15 minutes and this person for 15 minutes. And you're just thinking like, okay, this cost me $85 to process an order or something. And you're just trying to break that down like, okay, let's get to less, let's get to less, let's get to less. That's a great asset of like a technology system of how do we reduce the cost per transaction to do business? Because that's going to keep you, and generally you see this in like, we need someone to take care of AR and we need someone to take care of account setup and we need someone that takes care of entering the order into this system or something, right? Like it's just in that, or we need someone to proof it. And so it's just all these all these touches along the way. And so you're trying to just reduce those steps. That would be like, in my head, that's like an asset. And so part of that is data, part of it's the applications and the integrations as well, and how stuff works together. But when I think of assets, it's systems that can keep things reduced in human touches and also generate potentially income on themselves. So I feel like you see this more in the sales to accounting side than you do in other areas, but because there's real hard tangible aspects to it. Like, can we have a one button click for AR and automatic reminders go out for past due notices, right? Like that's a great spot. If we can do that, now we've basically created some sort of machine that's asking for cash. Like that is literally like a pure asset type thing. Like that's as detailed as it gets. On the marketing side, you see this more with apps that drive like referrals and inbound stuff. So we see it with campaigns of like refer a friend, or like refer a friend's a good one. Samples are a good one. 30-day free trials, any system that enables like sort of like the business to keep growing without a touch to the person. Like if I don't need a person to reach out and I can just get some sort of like warm lead or generate an account or subscription without a touch, that's like another business asset that would look like as an app. I don't know that it's less so on the data, but it is a big like app functionality standpoint. What's cool is, and actually going back to OpsHub, this kind of comes full circle. Due to the custom code functionality and workflows, you can actually run a lot of these automations through OpsHub with just like a little bit of creativity in understanding the systems. Like we set a lot of these up, right? Like we set up referral programs or refer a friend type things where people are incentivized to refer their friends. We've set up text notifications or text reminders on key dates. We set up invoicing and invoicing reminders, payment links. Like OpsHub lets you do all this and sort of dynamically just set the timing and build stuff in as you grow. So it's a great tool set for that. Again, it's more on the application side than the data side, the way I think about it.
Well, and what you're describing is streamlining a lot of processes. And okay, maybe like on the one-to-one level, the single interaction that you're removing, or the 2 minutes that you save in the one interaction, it's 2 minutes, it's incremental. But when you're talking about stuff at scale, at a large volume, then to your point, that becomes a much bigger win.
Yes, definitely. The one fun thing about, I'd say, working in this space is that when you fix things, it's highly visible in your inner organization. So like in this role, or as this tech wizard, or even us as a partner, right? Like if we fix something that 70 people in a company have to do every day or once a week, and it's not something they like doing, and we can take that 1 5-minute task off their plate, you just have 70 happy employees that are just like, this is fantastic. One less thing I have to do, right? So there's a point of this too, of like, there's the intangible aspect of this. Some of these things make just a really work more enjoyable.
Absolutely.
So actually, Aaron, you reminded me of, something that we've talked about before, Commerce Hub, which has been around now for, officially launched 1.5 years ago, but it's been around probably in beta at least for 2 years in North America. And you just, as you were chatting, I realized that was actually another like such a simple touch point, and it's typically very early on in the customer journey. So obviously the customer has gone through the marketing part of the journey, but they've now put their hand up and said, and I've had a few examples of this recently, just personally, where you say, okay, yeah, I've chosen your company, I want to buy your product or service. How do I pay you? And they're like, oh, well, okay, we'll send you an email, and then you get the email, and it's, if you want to pay by credit card, click here. If you want to pay via ACH because it's a recurring bill, call our office. It's like, really? It's 2024, and if I want to use ACH, which is better for you, you're making it so hard for me. And this is like my first interaction as now a customer. That is such a like terrible experience to start a relationship off, a new relationship off with a business. Whereas if so I always use the opportunity whenever I can to tell folks, especially those who are using HubSpot, and if you're not, maybe again, this is another reason to check it out. Especially, a lot of services businesses who don't typically realize that they can actually get customers to pay on their website, and very simply give them the option with one click to either pay by credit card or to pay by ACH. Very, very quick, and almost zero friction, versus the tens of thousands of services companies right now who are still going through that really clunky manual process of, again, and you got to call, Suzanne at the office, who, again, if she picks up, and she might not, it's just, another good example of, how can that the initial transaction of a new customer, how do you make that an asset versus a liability?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, actually, so this is actually, I think, even a bigger macro thing that you're describing is the buying habits are changing. I don't think that rapidly. I think it's been happening for 10 years. If you work with an e-commerce business, you'll really understand when purchasing happens. If you work in an e-commerce business, you will see a lot of transactions happening at 9 p.m. to midnight. Like, a lot of transactions happen at that time. And that's because people are home from work. They've spent time with their kids or family. They've done whatever, gone out to dinner, done their things, and everyone's just finally sitting down and having some time to just relax. And they might be going through their emails or going through, okay, I got to remember to do this today. I have to do this. And so people are buying late at night. They're finishing things, or they're buying at like 6 a.m. before their family gets up and before they start the day. And so as a business, how are you meeting your buyers when they want to work? It's not fair to say, hey, I want my employees to now work 16 hours a day from 6 a.m. till midnight. Like, that's probably just you're not going to retain any employees doing that. But being able to do business from those hours without necessarily having people is super helpful. And so setting up, to your point, like payment links is a small one of like, hey, whenever you're ready to pay, here's the link to do that. They now don't have to catch you before 5 p.m. to do it. They might be in meetings all day. Who knows what comes up, but letting them say, okay, when I get home later tonight, I can pay it and take care of that. And tomorrow you're back on. You never miss a step, but it allowed you to do business twice as long. And so this whole digital commerce thing is super impactful for companies and just making their customers excited to do business with them.
Yeah, and actually, because I really I feel pretty strongly about this. So for any B2B businesses out there, if you're not yet doing B-commerce, so Aaron was just talking about e-commerce. B-commerce is also a thing. So if you're a B2B business, you can do exactly the same thing that e-commerce businesses are doing. Make it easy for your customers to buy from you in their own time, asynchronously, without being reliant at all on any of your pretty valuable employees.
Yeah, it's super. You're seeing it. I think everyone's taking steps in that direction. It's payment links. It's pay on your invoice directly, automated reminders. Even depending on the business model, some people do text links to pay on stuff, but that's more so like when your customers prefer that format of communication. But there's so many ways to do it now where it doesn't require a full custom online business portal. You can get started fairly easily.
Yeah, I mean, I think
so.
Sorry to go off on a tangent here, but this can literally be set up in like a half hour. This is not a complex change. The first step can be set up in a half hour, and then you can kind of clean up, working backwards the steps to make it even more efficient. But switching from whatever system a business is currently using to this very, very simple system for your customers is a very, very quick setup.
Yeah, absolutely. So Amy, hopefully that answered some of your questions about assets and liabilities. Okay.
It may be a good time to wrap up. I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to be sure to mention, or tips that you have for folk that might be listening.
I would say, if you're in the HubSpot ecosystem, definitely try out the AI tools that they're launching. I would say one thing I look at, I think with any software, is I like to buy the tools that are really good at what they do and not kind of good, like really good. And so HubSpot's rolled out a lot of really awesome AI tools. I think this year's been the year of AI. So like they've kind of specifically designed the tools to fit that AI theme, but there's a couple of great ones. If you're looking at OpsHub, they have an AI tool now that detects anomalies in your database and recommends cleanup actions. So if there's a couple of ways this tool works. One, it will spot any data fields or sections that have gaps in them and recommend either deleting or cleanup recommendations. Another one is that it'll find if there's any extraneous values. So you can tell it, monitor this property for 30 days and get a baseline. And then anytime after that, it will now it will alert you if there's things outside of your normal sets, which is cool. There's another one, Content Hub just launched, which has got some great AI tools around that. It's just content generation. It can take one piece of content and turn it into like 4 or 5 pieces of content for you, which is fantastic. It will do a lot of converting audio to text and text to audio and vice versa. They have AI image generation for your content posts. There's a lot of great tools in there. I would say take a look at that. There's also tools around the AI and data forecasting. So a great example, this isn't an OpsHub thing, but this is a great tool that this tech witch or analyst or type role would be in. So if you've ever done sales forecasting, it is CFO has one idea of what the sales forecast is. Head of sales has another idea. Sales reps themselves, everyone's got their own opinion on it. It's who knows where you want in your own business. Someone's right. But it probably varies who is. There's a new function in HubSpot now where the sales reps actually submit their forecasts like usual, but it will give you, after a couple submissions, it'll start to tell you you're usually off by this amount, and here's where you're off. And it'll start to coach you on why your forecasts are off and what it actually thinks your actual forecast will be. There's some cool tools like that where it's like, okay, this is like a really niche specialty, great functionality that should come in a tool that does it's a CRM that does sales marketing service. Like it has great tools around those areas that help people do their jobs and be great at it. So check them out. I think it's a great thing to if you have the subscriptions, try it out. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Really good. Well, thanks, Aaron. Thanks so much for joining us today. I think there was some really, really good insights, and we look forward to having you on again in the future.
Yeah, and in case it wasn't clear to our listeners beforehand, I think they all know now that we're big HubSpot fangirls and guys.
Yeah, we have to work that. Hopefully I made that point clear today.
I think it came through pretty well. All right, thanks, guys.
Good.
Bye.